Good morning and welcome to Rome Sip and Eat.
Well, the heat wave has reached us, even up here in Scotland, so we've decided that as the landscaping has actually started outside and it's pretty hot and dusty here, we're going to head for the coast where we hear it might be a bit cooler.
Yeah, so a bit of a last minute decision. So we think we're going to go to St Abbs and there's a circular walk on St Abbs Head that we will attempt to do. We've walked through St Abbs briefly before, so I know there's a couple of cafes, so one for coffee and one for lunch maybe.
Yeah, and a cool breeze off the sea, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. St Abbs is in the very southeast of Scotland, just a little up the coast from Berwickshire and Eyemouth. Made it safely to the St Abbs National Nature Reserve car park. Took about an hour. So we're parked just at the top end of St Abbs. Parking here is £5 per vehicle or free if you're a National Trust Scotland member. And we've got a map here which includes a couple of the different walks that are available. So we'll come back and have a look at that later. But for now, I'm going to follow the sign for the footpath to the coffee shop and gallery, nature centre, etc. So, nature centre here, toilets next door.
It's a really nice day here, and the temperature is a little bit cooler. Dropped down to about 20 when we were driving into St Abbs, or into the car park, so that's good. Probably 3 or 4 degrees lower than currently near Kelso. The smell of freshly cut grass here at the little nature centre.
Lots to see and read in there.
So out of the car parking area and just wandering down towards the bay, and good news, we have a path.
So if St Abbs sounded vaguely familiar, this sign might be why. It's the filming location of New Asgard in Avengers Endgame. So there in the distance is St Abbs Head, and here is the first of the 2 cafes in St Abbs itself. There is also one up by the car park for the nature reserve, connected to the pottery, but that's not open today, and technically it's also not in St Abbs itself. So seeing as this is the first of the ones we've found, we should have a coffee here.
So we've just arrived in the old school cafe. It's nice and quiet, so we've ordered a couple of cheese scones, as you can see, my Americano and a latte, which in total came to £12.50, and we will be reviewing very shortly.
Okay, so that was very nice. Cheese scones, not as cheesy as some. Very, very tall, but fresh and nice and warm and very tasty. The coffee was very strong. Yeah, very strong. But with a brown sugar, the latte turned out to be quite pleasant. Not one I'd rush back for, but certainly nothing wrong with it. And that's just personal taste, I think, as much as anything else.
It's a very pleasant view down across the bay in St Abbs. A couple of boats down there, just, I'm not sure, fishing maybe, but been sitting there for a little while. And plenty of gulls on that rock as well, and generally in the area.
So just retracing our route back up towards the car park to continue on the circular walk. Obviously quite a lot of tourists here, although you'd think that to have actually got here you'd have to have driven quite a long way, but they've stopped for a bit maybe and they need a reminder. So we actually did the very first part of the circular route when we started heading down into St Abbs, but we came off of it to go and find that coffee. So we're heading back up to the St Abbs Twinned with New Guard sign. That's not the name, is it?
New Asgard.
The St Abbs Twinned with New Asgard sign. That makes a lot more sense. So we're taking the footpath to St Abbs Head, starting off on the All Ability path, and then we're going to take what I believe was called the Lighthouse Loop as well.
So the plan is to do the yellow walk and tack on the Lighthouse Loop afterwards. I think it works out about 3 miles.
Looks to be quite a popular route, and definitely starting uphill because we're headed up there. Even right at the start, some lovely views. And then looking back down over St Abbs itself, you can see the harbour there. And then beyond it, you can just about make out Coldingham Bay. Now that is a long way down, but the water is so clear you can see the rocks at the bottom.
So we walked a little way along that path that you can see up there with that couple just making their way across. It's quite a drop, but it's quite safe. And now you can see back down into St Abbs, the harbour, and Coldingham Bay. I think we might have maybe misidentified it previously, but it is tucked round to the right behind the houses, and there's a nice little cafe there and quite a sandy beach, because most of the inlets here are quite rocky and pebbly, but definitely a nice sandy beach over at Coldingham Bay.
Heading downwards, which does of course mean that at some point we're going to be coming back up.
So we've done another little section. Again, when you can see those folks with the black dog walking back up, that path is quite dry and crumbly. I would say if you're going to do this, be very confident in your footwear that it's got a good grip, because I'm casually dressed today, so trainers, and slipped a few times coming down there. So we wanted to come down here and have a look at this cove, so worth continuing on, but I would emphasise make sure you're happy with your footwear if you're doing this.
Next little inlet. Now it looks like the path, once it goes through the gate up there, might be going quite a long way up, but we'll figure that out when we get there. Well, the good news for us is I'm not sure where those people were going that were heading up the hill, but the path goes this way, which is decidedly more flat.
So back when we started and had a look at the two options, Discovery Trail and Lighthouse Loop, we said we'd add that on, so here we are. It's a break in the path. Left, continue on Discovery, but this way slightly uphill to the lighthouse.
I think I spoke too soon. Plenty of uphill on this route too.
So we've almost made it to the top of the Lighthouse Loop. Tip number 2 after my crumbling descending path is, if you're going to walk this, I would recommend small steps in a more upright stance, because it's quite a long way up, and if you overstride or push on too quickly, you're really going to suffer with this. But walking in a more controlled manner certainly makes it a lot more manageable. I mean, you can see how far we've come up, and I'm filming this just as we reach the top, not out of breath, feeling quite happy with things. So it's not challenging if you're a serious walker, I'm sure, but just for a casual walk along the coast, this would be quite hard for some people. So take your time. We've got a little way to go to the lighthouse, but we're nearly there, I think.
There's a whole building. I did not expect that. I guess the lighthouse keeper needed a cottage. That's a very short lighthouse. I guess it gains its height from being on the cliff rather than from being a lighthouse.
Also, it appears to be a speaker of some description. I imagine if that's when they spot ships that aren't paying attention and they need to shout very loudly at them to turn away.
And it turns out that the lightkeeper's cottage, or cottages, are holiday rentals, so here's somewhere that you could stay if you so choose. I assume there's a path up here. I assume there's a road up here, or it might be a little tricky to get your stuff there. Quick wander off the path to this hut, which seems to have some more information about the lighthouse. Feel free to press pause if you'd like to read it properly. And if you have read that sign, you'll discover that the speaker was designed to produce a siren fog signal that was driven by hot air engines. It started in 1876, was the first of its kind in Scotland, and was finally discontinued in 1987. And the lighthouse itself had manual operation until 1993, at which point it was automated. Yep, there is indeed a road. Apparently that is a good spot for paddleboarding and snorkeling. I think it's probably a bit chilly, but at least they've got their wetsuits on. Lovely views again.
It looks like the lighthouse route follows the road. So this actually gives you quite a good perspective of what we've done on the Lighthouse Loop, because it begins down there to the right, and we've made our way up and up, still going up, and you can just make out the top of the lighthouse there in the middle of the screen. They continue on and then drop down on the road here. There's a couple of cars parked there, which we walked past, continuing down, and then crossed over a cattle grid right at the bottom. You can't see it here exactly. And then followed this path all the way back up again to the top of this hill. Quite challenging, the Lighthouse Loop, I would say. But then we're only casual walkers, really.
You can tell it's quite hot because there's a bunch of sheep up there all standing in a line in order to be able to get the shade from the wall. And the route has followed this road for a while now, which definitely makes for much easier walking. And when I say road, it definitely is a road, but it's very quiet. I've only seen a couple of vehicles so far. And we're back to the car park. It's definitely time to head back down to by the harbour and find a cold drink and some lunch. At least we know we've got the cafe we went to earlier as a backup if that one turns out to be full. So here's where the other cafe is, but not open on a Wednesday. So this is near the car park and near the National Trust Visitor Centre.
So that was lunch at the unusually named Ebb Cars Cafe. Sounds like it should be a taxi firm really, but I digress. A couple of sort of vegan haggis and chilli sauce rolls were quite nice and filling, so did the job. Washed down with a couple of Diet Cokes. Not too bad value.
About £18.
Yeah, about £18. There were limited sort of veggie and vegan options, mostly revolving around vegan haggis.
There was actually quite a few more on the main menu. I think the specials menu didn't have so much, but the main menu had a spicy bean burger and assorted sandwiches and paninis.
Yeah, okay. I missed that. Sorry. But it was good, I thought. Quite nice, and we managed to get a little table upstairs. So the building is quite sort of windy and quite busy inside downstairs where you're ordering, and there's a little staircase at the back which led up to quite a quiet and airy area to sit and eat. So all in all, a good experience. But you're kind of a captive audience down here because in St Abbs itself, this is pretty much it. There's the other cafe at the top of the hill where we had our coffee this morning, but there's nothing else down in town here for visitors. But that shouldn't put you off.
So, just overlooking the harbour, we've just watched a couple of people bring in their little boat and they're just tying it up at the moment. Got the lifeboat station over there, a few seagulls, and around here there's another car park which is pay and display. And I'm just wandering over to this map. So the view from the pay and display car park does reveal more rocks and definitely more birds. There are a very large number of them nesting out there, and I don't know if that one's nesting or if it's just very comfortable. Parking in the pay and display car park is £1.20 an hour or £20 if you want to stay overnight. We've started making our way back up to the car park now. We'll see you there. Okay, so we're back in the car. Definitely cooler here than at home.
Yeah, it was a really good choice, I think, because we just checked temperature indoors and it's like 28 degrees near Kelso and only sort of 2021 here on the coast, so excellent.
Yeah, so good idea to get a little bit further out rather than staying local today, I think.
Yeah, that sea breeze was lovely.
Yeah. So it was a slightly more challenging walk than anticipated. It's always hard to judge, isn't it, when you're just looking at it online, how much undulation there is, how steep the paths are, but very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do it, you need to think that it is actually going to be a little bit challenging, and allow yourself a bit longer to do it. So I would say if it's probably 3.5 miles, I would say we could normally do something like that in about 80-90 minutes, but you want to give yourself a good 2 hours. I think it's fairly undulating in places, and a bit sort of crumbly underfoot as well, so you had to take it careful.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, normally if we were just walking on the streets, it would be less than 20 minutes for a mile, but it was more challenging. And of course there's lots of times you want to stop and you want to have a look and take a photo and try and figure out what bird it is or what flower it is, or read about the lighthouse. So yeah, definitely want to allow yourself at least a couple of hours for, but it was a good walk. So as a reminder, that was the Discovery Trail with the Lighthouse Loop at St Abbs Head National Nature Reserve.
Yeah, when you got up towards the top of the Lighthouse Loop and beyond, there were some fantastic bits of scenery to snap and down into the water and the coves. Very, very good.
Yep. And then nice coffee and a good lunch at the 2 different cafes in St Abbs. I think next time we come, maybe we'll do them the other way around, just for a bit of variety.
Yeah, it's pretty much all you can go for anyway here. So you can have your coffee in one and your lunch in the other.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there is the one that's up at the Pottery, up the car park just outside of St Abbs, which is close to where we are.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
but only open on certain days.
Yeah, and not Wednesdays.
Not Wednesdays.
So we'll head home, and hope that you're keeping cool. See you next week.